Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Mills, and I'm the Executive Director of the Kamloops Symphony. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you happen to be in the world, for our very first Facebook Live event for the Kamloops Symphony, specifically our conducting workshop and chat with Dina Gilbert. Of course, I'm not Dina Gilbert, but we'll be welcoming her on the screen here shortly. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is, of course, Daniel Mills, the Executive Director. Before we start, I do want to thank so much all of our sponsors, our patrons, our donors, and everyone who's made this process for us possible. Of course, it's been very difficult for us to have to postpone our concerts, and we're very eager to come back to our audiences and what we do normally. And we want to thank all those who've made it possible for us to survive this period, but we're very eager to come back strong as ever. As well, I want to give a quick shout out to our public funders, specifically the BC Arts Council and the Canada Council for the Arts, providing emergency funding during these difficult times. Again, this has ensured that we can continue operating so that when we come back at it, we'll be as strong as ever. So thank you again to those and the taxpayers who have provided funds through those programs. So a little bit about how it's going to work today. We have three parts for you. First, Dina and I will be talking a little bit about what a music director does and what a conductor does for an orchestra. Then, of course, we'll have an audience participation section where you at home are going to learn some techniques of conducting and how what you can do. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. And at the very end, we'll have some time for questions and answers for all of you. We did ask for submitted questions ahead of time, but for those of you who have not done that, we will definitely welcome comments as we can go in, and just feel free to comment in the comment box and we'll try and incorporate them as we can. So again, this is, of course, our first time doing this kind of thing, so we do ask for your flexibility and patience in the event that something goes wrong. We hope that it doesn't. We ran through this earlier today, but I think hopefully it will go pretty well. And but if it does, just stay on the line. We'll get going as soon as we can. And one last thing before we get going, of course, I want to give a big shout out to my colleague Ryan Noakes, who's actually on the line splicing this together as we go. So without further ado, I think I'd like to welcome our music director all the way from her home in Montreal, Madame Dina Gilbert.
Hello.
Hello, there she is. It looks like it's working. How are you doing, Dina?
I'm super excited to do my debut as on Facebook Live. So this is something different in my career. So it's exciting, and I'm really looking forward to be finally connecting with our fabulous audience. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, obviously, we've been talking a lot through the last few weeks, so I'm not a stranger to you, but how have you been coping through all of this? Please share with our audiences today.
Yeah, I know that you're familiar with this background, with all the meetings we've been having. Obviously, like every musician, every peer person who are not right now able to do their profession, it's a shock for sure. But looking at the positive aspect, I would say that my plants have never been in a better shape home. Finally put my luggage in some place and totally empty it for the first time in a while. And I've been cooking a lot, playing a little bit more piano, clarinet, and so on. And of course, as you know, we've been working a lot together so we can implement a lot of projects to make sure that the Kamloops Symphony connects with its audience as soon as possible. So yeah, that's pretty much how I'm balancing the less good and the good aspect regarding this crisis that we are living, everyone. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much again, and thanks for joining us today. I hope this will be a fun experience for everyone. So along that line, what can people expect from today? Obviously, it's a conducting workshop in chat, and normally we do a conducting 101 workshop in schools. And I'm wondering, does this have something to do with that, or you can talk a little bit about what we're up to today?
So again, I'm jumping in a new space on this because, like you mentioned, I've been doing some things before and providing activities on the behalf of the Kamloops Symphony Orchestra. As an example, for sure, I really like doing those conducting 101 workshops where actually I have 7 musicians of the KSO coming up with me, and then we visit different elementary schools. We present different great pieces of music to the kids so they can hear Mozart, Grieg, Beethoven, different kind of composers. They get the opportunity to hear those wonderful instruments such as a string quartet, bassoon, clarinet, and flute. And of course, since it's an interactive workshop, I'm guiding them through different kind of basic conducting exercises. And some of them are becoming my apprentices and get the opportunity to finally actually test their new aptitude, their new skills, conducting for the first time the orchestra. So it's quite an experience for us musicians to see how spontaneous the music can be and how reactive the kids are to classical music. So I have to say this is one of the most of my highlights, I would say, as a music director, being able to provide this passion of classical music to young kids. And on another kind of chapter, like you see on the picture, one of my apprentices of the occasion, trying to conduct the orchestra. For sure, I'm thinking like, if I be that young girl at that age, I'm sure I would have known right away that I was meant to be a conductor. But it took another path, another long way for me to get there. Another activity that actually we've been provided earlier this season was thanks to Christy Goley. There was one day where actually for a few hours got to teach conducting lessons, getting back to the basics to about 20 different high school teachers, band teachers and such. So it was really fun to share our experience and to go back and forth, answer their question, and kind of like getting back to the basic about, again, a few things that you might learn today in this workshop. So again, one of the things that is sad today is obviously it's going to be air conducting because we don't have those wonderful musicians with us. And I wish we could. But also, just to warn you ahead of time, we've been trying, with some music and backgrounds and such, and there's so much delay that it doesn't really work out. So what we're going to do is a little bit more like if you be practicing scales as a conductor, meaning that we're really going to practice basic techniques that are not necessarily linked to music, but just to get, our hands moving and to understand a little bit the really basic aspect of the conducting. But, it's like driving. It doesn't take long to drive a car, but are you going to be a good driver? That's another story. So I would say it's a little bit the same thing as a conductor. I will give you and provide a few tricks in 5 minutes. So then, yeah, you can pretend to be a conductor. But I will see if I have some competition getting on. Someone who's going to step for me after this workshop. We'll see.
Perfect. So, well, we look forward to that in the second half of today's session. And I'm sure everyone at home is looking forward to learning a little bit about how they can conduct from the comfort of their own homes. And speaking of that, is there anything that they need for today's workshop?
Yeah, so again, I'm not expecting that everybody has like a conducting baton unless you have a kid who is a fan of Harry Potter. Maybe you have something that looks like it. But I would say just like grab anything that could look like a conducting baton for now. So be original, be creative, and actually like post your picture with what you found. And I think we're going to have some interesting, I hope we're going to have some interesting ideas regarding what you can find at home. Another thing, just for another weird exercise later on, just find also a coin. So I will explain later on. So a coin and anything that could look like a conducting baton. But I would this might be harder, just so you know.
Well, I'm sure everyone's looking forward to that. So let's move into the first part of this session, talk a little bit more about conducting and being a music director specifically. So I think before all this, one quick question that was submitted before we started, and maybe is what do you enjoy most about conducting? This was submitted by Laura. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, so Laura, there's so many great things about being a conductor, and I feel really privileged doing this profession. I'm pinching myself every morning because I'm super lucky. When is this going to end? I'm going to wake up. I would like to wake up from the pandemic now so that I can really get back to work. But what I like the most is actually that when you're a conductor, you have the perfect whole combination of being a musician without having to pick only one instrument. And you also have no more filter, I would say, between you and the music, because obviously the instrument brings all different kind of technical aspects that are sometimes, more stressful. You have a reed that is too dry. You have, your hands who are sweating or whatever, all that kind of things. But I feel that as a conductor, we have the luxury of just being really close to the music and the sound right away, thanks to obviously the whole expertise of all the fabulous musicians who are part of the orchestra. So, and this is the second thing. So because of the music itself, that I can touch a little bit about everything. And then because of the contact and the connection I can have with the musicians, be it in rehearsal, in concerts, and also the fabulous contact and opportunity we have as conductor to share our passion with different kind of audiences. So this is like a real luck to be a conductor, I would say, because of those two things.
Well, we're also very lucky to have you here in our symphony in Kamloops. So hopefully it's a mutual thing. And so maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but if you had to describe what the job of a conductor is, how would you do that?
Yeah, the job of a conductor, if I'm like doing a quiz and brief answer, I would say that the conductor is a musician that has the responsibility of coordinating the way an orchestra will be playing a piece. Meaning that like you are the person, you are leader, but you're also a musician. And with your knowledge, with the guidance of your gestures, with your communication, nonverbal communication and verbal communication in the rehearsal process, it's your responsibility to make sure that everybody will be ready before we get to the concert. And you need to fully illustrate what is in the score. So what is the most important thing as a conductor is that actually I'm at the service of the composer and the score itself. So this is not about, I want this, I want this, I want that. It's more about what Beethoven 7th Symphony should be played in this kind of venue today with this orchestra for this audience. So this is a little bit what I would say briefly, what is important for the job of a conductor.
And why do some groups need a conductor and some don't? Like, why do we have a conductor with an orchestra, but not smaller groups?
Totally. I mean, you can, when you have only a small ensemble of musicians, you see, for example, let's take a string quartet. A string quartet, they will be easily be able to see each other really, really nicely. They'll be also able to hear each other really quite almost the same as if they be at a conducting level, a conductor place, I would say. So there's not that kind of perspective impact that can be tricky when you get with a bigger ensemble of musicians. So of course, as soon as we are 20, 35, 60 musicians, then a choir, then a soloist, then let's say a ballet company on the stage, you need to have one person who will take that responsibility a little bit of like managing the full view of the piece, the execution of the piece, to make sure that everybody can fully concentrate on their part, providing their best expertise, but again, for the joy of the full impact of the whole orchestra. So I would say because of a bigger ensemble, and it's also it went with the historic of the pieces, of course, because Vivaldi, for example, then it'd be maybe just the solo concertmaster who would be leading the orchestra, and this position who was without a conductor before now is still super important, because I would say Svetozar in the Kamloops Symphony Orchestra or any solo violin in an orchestra is like the quarterback of the orchestra, or the coach also, and we need to have again that really clear indication and leadership that is there. But I would say that a big orchestra has like everybody knows their role in this, so we can fully be achieving a great masterpiece of music. The other thing is also that if a trombone player is really far away, of course they cannot hear the soft piano dynamic of the first violin in front of the orchestra. So this is why the conductor is now then a visual reference on which every instrument, depending of where they are sitting on the stage, can rely and know exactly where to play their sound. So then the sound will be exactly together at my perspective at the podium, and also, of course, for the audience. And so I said it's also about historically, of course, then the pieces, the orchestra was getting bigger and bigger, but also the works themselves were more complex and more complicated. Therefore, to have more cohesion, to achieve better results, having a person who was not like rehearsing already or playing an instrument at the violin or at the harpsichord, who could fully have their concentration on the piece and the score.
Excellent. So as kind of leading into our next subject here, so you mentioned that, of course, the orchestra is made up of many different individual parts, and I'm wondering how those individual parts affect your job as a conductor.
So let's take, for example, what Svetozar or any violin one part would look like if we take Beethoven's Symphony number 7, first movement. So you see, as an example here, the first few bars that this section would be playing. And this is their part. So they know, for example, okay, I'm doing this chord bar 1, I'm doing this chord bar 3, this chord bar 5. But then how about those rest bars and everything? They don't have the content. They don't know the content there about who's leading there, what is actually their dynamics in comparison with my dynamic. And this is where later on you're going to see the full score. Then this is my job to kind of inform the orchestra about what their other parts are, since obviously the musicians are coming at the rehearsal and they are prepared with the expertise of what they see on the paper. But then we need to kind of work it out, as a comedian would be memorizing its text, but then the producer, realizer might say, hey, you know what, I would prefer that you do some emphasis on this word instead. And in this case, it would be on a particular note, for an example. So these are just the few things that I would say how a part could look like. And in this case, maybe this piece would be 13, 14 pages for first violins, and as opposed to my score that would have, I don't know, 120 pages, since we have all the parts there.
And specifically on this piece, so we had a question that came in before about whether or not you provide direction to the string players on how they move their bow, or what we call bowings. And if we look in that score that we provided, there were some symbols, and I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that. And maybe Ryan, you could zoom in on that first line there.
Sure. Actually, for the strings player, they need extra preparation in their case, because since they are not the only person in their section, they need to already come at the first rehearsal with at least, you know, an unicity in the way they will first work it out. And of course, then it's the expertise of all the principal musicians, such as, for example, in KSO, it would be Svetozar at first writing bowings. That's what we call writing bowings. And you're going to see, for example, over the first chord that we see there in the first bar, you see kind of a bracket kind of gesture like this. And this is yeah, exactly. I don't know how you would put that. But this sign is a sign that illustrates that this will need to be played with a down bow, as opposed to later on when we get to bar 7 on the piano dynamics. Then we see, for example, this sign, and this is not like, yeah, it's cool, okay? This is for an up bow. And then there will be all different kinds of combination with down bow, up, down, all different kind of combination that will naturally provide different kind of sound. Obviously, there's not only one clear way of doing things, and every kind of decision could be good, but the most important thing is at first, with experience of working together for a few seasons already, me and Svetozar will have a better understanding of how most of it should be for example, the way I'm usually preparing for Beethoven Symphony. So we will write down on all the parts, and we can even scroll down if need be on this part, and he will do that work. Then he will provide this part and this work to Boris Ulanovitz, who's our principal second violin. Then Boris will do his own work doing this, and then it will be Ashley, the viola, and then so it goes like this till the end, until we have the complete string section that are there. So Martin, and then finally Victor. Then we are sending those parts, but that means that this way, from the first rehearsal on, all musicians of each section will have a coherent way and a unison way of playing, of doing the bow. But even then, there could be many things that could be adjusted in the rehearsal. For example, should that be played at the tip or in the middle of the bow? And sometimes after discussion, because it's something that still doesn't work with the way I would like the phrasing to be, for example, then we could decide, or we could change to a new bow stroke. But it's quite important, or it would be quite rare that we change bowings within a section. Some occasions, but it would be quite rare, because also, just, you know, physically, we don't want anybody to get hurt by it's visually, but also musically not as efficient, of course, if we do so.
So that's a little bit about how, our string players prepare and doing the bowings. And I'm wondering, kind of a segue, and the question that was submitted is how do you prepare for rehearsal? What do you do with the score beforehand? This
Yeah.
was submitted by John. So thank you, John.
Okay, so John, actually, I'm really grateful you sent that question, because people who doesn't know about a conductor and just come, you just see the person waving their arms at the concert, and you're like, what is this kind of gymnastic? Is this just for a show or something? But just so you're aware, 90% of my work is really before the first rehearsal. So I need to spend a lot of time studying the score. I need to, and then, for example, we're going to explore a little bit how it looks like. And I can spend 1 hour, 2 hours just on the first page, asking myself question about why did Beethoven chose this, and why did he, it's a little bit a quest, I would say. So then I can finally have my interpretation of how it could be played, knowing also the players with which orchestra I will be playing this and in which venue. So they're all different components. And then I need to be just convincing in my gesture, find the gesture that will work it out. But again, it's nothing about trying and conducting home and all these kind of things. It's more about, it's super important for me that it's super clear in my mind, so then I can express it as spontaneous as possible. And just to give you an idea about how weird it is, the concept of being a conductor, Daniel, you're an experienced conductor, obviously. And to me, sometimes to point out the difference about my profession in the position, in comparison with a musician, it's like, okay, Daniel, you'll be playing Rite of Spring in 1 month. I am sending you the part, but you cannot take your instrument to try anything. You just need to look at your part. Just, it's fine. Just think about your fingerings, think about your register. Just think about how your lips should be, so everything will work out. How would you feel?
It'd be pretty stressful.
Pretty stressful?
Yes.
Okay. I would say, yeah. I mean, so that's actually what is the job of conductor. We are so excited at one point when we finally get to meet the musicians, but we are also, there's always that kind of electricity before we meet an orchestra for the first rehearsal, even more if we're a guest conductor and it's the first time we actually even meet those musicians. So then we need to grab the atmosphere, to find the characteristic of the orchestra, and really switch to what we have, what we are receiving, and find something really coherent that will make a really great performance for all the audience member. So how about we go maybe tiny bit from top to bottom in this first page of Beethoven 7. So as a conductor, I will have every line. So every single note that all the musicians are in front of me have, it's there. So this is really essential. On the top, you're going to see at first a group like this of woodwind instruments. And this is like a way that we can really see in between the different sections of a score and navigate through it really quickly. At first, we have then the woodwind here. So we'll be having always the higher register instrument going to the lower register instrument. So of course, then here in this Beethoven 7th Symphony, we have 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons. Then if we scroll down tiny bit, we're going to find in the score the brass. And in this case, sorry, trombones and tuba. In this case, we have horns and trumpets. Then we will be having the timpani and percussion section. In this case, we have only the timpani, and it shows which note will be needed for this specific movement. And then we'll be having the string section here. So you have violin 1, this means the full section of violin 1, and then you can see that actually we have the same few bars that you saw in Svetozar violin 1 part earlier. Section 2, then violas, then cello, and basses. So this means that this first page that is that big, I need to look really carefully and navigate from a staff to another one for the important things. So I can, and obviously I would turn my pages way more often as it goes. So I'm used to read, all these things at the same time and navigate through this.
So this is a blank version of the score. Do you have what kind of markings do you make to make it easier for you to follow?
Yeah, obviously there are some conductors who are perfectly able to do their job without any annotation, and I'm super like, I wish I would have this talent or this gift. But to me, when I'm studying so much time with the score, it's it's like a kind of book that you really like and appreciate, and you want to underline the things or that has the most impact on you and these kind of things. So in this case, Beethoven Symphony Number 7, I've been conducting with a few orchestras already, and I've done also a version on the choreography of Uwe Schultz with Grand Ballet Canadien de Montréal. So each time I'm learning also of what I've done before with another orchestra. I'm taking notes of, actually, I really like that better, and comparing from a time to another one. And sometimes starting from scratch with a brand new score as well. But there are a few things, for example, that like I will write down. Again, to navigate more easily in between the music, I will sometimes do a vertical line like this, such as I see more easily some block of information. And I can see directly, it's going to be 4 bars before letter B or 9 bars before this, because, it's easy to see directly. And for study, as an example, for example, if we scroll down or see the full page just for a second, Ryan. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so if you be to sing that full page right now, you see, for example, like a big chord. You see that we have always big chords from the strings and the full orchestra on the first bar, and then a third bar, beginning of 5th bar, and then oops, there's something that will be changed tiny bit at the end, those 2 last bars of this page. Also, if we can zoom in right now. So one of the things I would need as a conductor would be, okay, so I have those stroke with those quarter notes, so how long should they be? And at least making sure that everybody in the orchestra would be playing them at the same forte dynamic, but still hearing all the colors of these instruments, making sure they have the same length. This is super important. Then one other thing I could see is that after that opening chord that we have, right away our ear should be following the oboe. So Maria right there. So that half note kind of gesture. And in this case, for example, I circle like, this note I would like to be more expressive, going to the 3rd half note, for example. But more expressive could be so many things. Is it that I want it stronger? Is it that I want it with tiny bit of vibrato? Is it that I want more color, more impact with it? So there's tons of things that could be imagined before we get to the rehearsal, and sometimes that we'll receive actually also for the musicians. So this is something that I really like to work on. So for example, in this line, I've been putting HT in green, and I'm using sometimes like abbreviation of some words, in this case, hautbois in French. So that's why you have HT. Then going to Nani, and then oboe, and then Sally with clarinets. Da, dee, da, da. So we have that same thing, then moving up, and then will I phrase again the same way? So it's all these things that looking at the score, we find a lot of information. So going to 2 bars of oboe, going to 2 bars of the same 4 half note of clarinets. And you see here, Beethoven decided that since the register is tiny bit lower, let's have the 2 clarinets doubling the same. So it's like already going to be stronger, but then makes sense with the opening 2 bars of the oboe only. And then let's go to the horns. Again, there are 2 playing this piece, because now there's way more action over this theme. So we want to still hear it clearly. So my understanding would be that this 4 half note link that we have, we should still hear it the same balance, even though we have other things over it. So this is just like small example of things I will be asking myself, and I will also maybe change my perception and view of the piece depending of, again, the needs of the ballet dancer on stage, or discussion with a choreographer, or many aspects.
I think it's important to note, this is only 8 bars of, a 45-minute piece. So there's obviously no shortage of things to think about and prepare for. So that gives some light on the preparation. So the question is, at the actual concert, what are you up to? What's happening during the concert?
But actually, before the concert, there's the rehearsal. That again, I would just like to recap really quickly. The rehearsals. Maybe some people don't know that a professional orchestra, they get their music. Of course, they will be practicing their part home, but then we actually all meet together just for a short amount of time, just 2 days, 1 day, 3 days before the concert, and this is where all the action is there. And concretely, we are getting from the first reading all together, getting acquainted to the sound we have around and the people who are playing with us to finally get to the concert. So I would say then there's maybe 5-7% of my job actually leading the rehearsal, making sure that everybody will be feeling comfortable. And then when we finally get to the concert, and I'm really excited looking at all these beautiful faces right now on the screen at one of the previous KSO concerts. Actually, you know what? My job is mostly done. At that point, I feel I'm more of a coach. And since everybody knows what we should do and what kind of path we have, it's more about, when you're driving home and it's the same track, at one point you have a muscle memory and kind of thing, and you know where you're at. Though the weather could change really quickly, and it could be slidey, or there could be snow, or there could be anything that could be distracting. And this is why the most important thing I feel for a conductor is to be super in the moment. So as I'm computing things that should be corrected and such in the rehearsal process, for me, the concert is kind of like a sacred event. It's like being totally, fully in the moment and making sure, trying as much as possible, that all the people who are on stage with me will have that same mindset, so we can provide a really enriching and uplifting performance for our audience also to receive. So this is actually the job. But I would say, unless there's a dramatical, really big thing happening, usually, from that point on, I'm way, way, way less stressed before a concert than, let's say, 2 days before the first time I'm meeting an orchestra. Let's see.
That's great. Well, thank you. Just for those who might be tuning into us now or who've been silently waiting, if you do have any questions on anything that is being talked about, feel free to write them in the comments and we'll try and respond as appropriate. But we're happy for the time being to move on. So I think our audience members are all been patient. I think they're eager to learn their first steps of conducting. So maybe we can move over to that part of the session. So what do you think is the first thing someone needs to know about conducting in your mind?
But I'm going to go maybe with the conducting baton at first, because this is not an instrument, obviously, that doesn't make sound. There's no magic trick of any kind. You just need something that will make it work. Just general, I would say, tips if you are a music band teacher and you want to buy or purchase a conducting baton. I would say, it might be dumb, but just like make them roll on the table to make sure they are really like straight, because sometimes they are curvy and such, and like, small things are really distracting, as it would be for an instrumentalist or so. So we need to have something really clear, really even and such. Then you're going to find different conducting baton with different kind of handles here. But then it's just about the feeling, what you prefer, and they have also different weight depending on the wood or if it's cork and such. And usually there's a weight in it that makes it balance in a kind of point right here towards where you'd be putting your fingers, for example. Obviously, I'm not expecting that this is going to work.
Oh, almost.
I'm getting there. Okay. So, and also, it's better that it's white if you're wearing mostly black. And also the other thing, since the conducting baton, the only use of this is that it's the prolongation of your forearm. So it's just to provide more clarity and work a little bit less. Like with just one small movement of the wrist, it has like still way more amplitude when we are using a conducting baton. So I would say usually try to have something that will be about the length of your forearm. So it's just going to be more physically like natural to have this extension of your body. So these are the few things. Can you show me yours, Daniel?
Unfortunately, I only found a lighter, so that's what I have at home today. Probably not the safest thing, but that's what I could find.
Black. So
I'm sorry, it's black. Yeah, I'll try and conduct it against the wall here.
But please don't put it on the
No.
We don't want this to our Facebook.
So, quick question about that. Do you always use a baton? Or do you?
Not always, and it's hard for me to say when I'm choosing not, because it's as clear sometimes with a conducting baton or without it. Sometimes I just feel that both hands can be in action without having the rigidity. Oh my god, rigidity.
Rigidity. There you go.
Rigidity, of having and holding the conducting baton. But I mean, we can also perfectly conduct with only the hands. What is the important thing is, though, that like when you're conducting with just your hands, then the information should be towards, the fingertips. So, and if you're holding a baton, same thing, you need to provide the information at the tip of the baton. So we're going to see how we hold it to make sure that it's okay. Because if you're just holding a conducting baton without in its usual way, then it's not efficient. It's like wearing a mask under your nose. It's not efficient.
Yeah. So question is, you might see on the bottom of your screen from Matcha, she's asking, is there a left-handed or right-handed baton, or are they same? Or
same. It's same thing. So there's nothing, but though what is super important is, don't worry if you're left-handed, it might be actually an advantage for you, because we still need to work both hands. And sometimes they will be providing different kind of information, and this would be an addition of information you can provide. There are some conductors who will still decide and choose to conduct with the baton or just the left hand. So it's not that it's impossible, but I would say the few times I saw that, I was intrigued to ask the musician if they had found if they even like noticed about it. And after that was, oh, this is what I felt was different. And they couldn't like actually point it out at first, but they felt there was something different. As an example, the strings, if they are always used to see the gesture, but then they're having this, maybe they will have less information, or it would be different from their perspective of what they are used to. But I would say it's more for people who are on the side. People who are in front of you, I think it won't matter that much. But again, as a conducting teacher myself, usually I'm really saying, just like conduct with your right hand, and then, bring the left hand in practice.
And another question from Simon or Simon, my apologies, is there a reflective material on the wand to see better from a distance? You mentioned it being white before, but wondering about that.
No, there's nothing, unless I'd be doing, I don't know, Star Wars, and then taking,
a lightsaber.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Simon, I would say no. It's just blank white, and then black shirt, and it's just maybe if I'm doing silent movies. I recall actually one of the coach I had regarding silent film. He was telling me that. Having, some white here, chemise, white, comment on dit ça ici? Having
like a kaffa white, yeah, underneath.
Okay. This way, then it would be even clearer, because you're so much in the dark that just the conducting baton wouldn't be enough. So seeing also here clearly white could help out. But most of the time, this is enough.
Yeah, and I can add on from a musician's point of view. Usually, the conductor is facing or backs toward the audience, and so when the baton is not in front of them directly, it's in front of the audience, which is usually pretty dark in a concert or rehearsal setting. So the white usually sticks out pretty well.
Yeah, you're right. As opposed to now, where you see that like this is tricky. But yeah, usually it's better it's better characteristic when we are in real performance concert.
All right. So now we know a baton. What's the first, after having our baton in our hand, what's the next thing we need to know?
Okay, so first thing, I would say, I'm just going to move that down a bit. So the best way to hold your conducting baton is actually to take it from a table or a flat surface, to make sure you're not going to take it from under and such. And then I'm like, no, students, you shouldn't do that, okay? So you should have like this. So the top of your hand should be facing, or here, all the joints and stuff should be like going towards the ceiling and so. And again, we might move the way, but this will be the clearer way. And let's hold also between the thumb and the index, like this. And this part should be tiny bit like pulled inside of your, let's say, palm here. So then you feel that it's a connection, a natural connection with your body. And again, now I will say the do and don't, okay? So you need to have like as much as possible a clear line with the conducting baton, okay? And you shouldn't like hold it like this. You know, this is not useful because in this case, like I said, the information should be at the tip of the baton, okay? And this means that maybe, let's say Martin, the cello, will be following the wrist, and then maybe, I don't know, Heather will be following the tip of the baton here, and then it won't be clear because like it's not accurate. It needs to be in one direct line as much as possible. So when we have this way of taking it in our hand, we close gently the fingers, and then we'll be able to basically try to conduct. And I would say that like, yeah, I'm cheating. I've been like dressing up. I thought, oh, let's have a concert jacket for once in 2 months, but then I'm cheating with jeans. Yeah, that's me. Oh. So when you're like this, then you should have like a kind of invisible table, and this is actually where you're gonna feel the sound here. Okay, so it's as if you having a keyboard at the piano or something. So this is the place where you're gonna work out with your conducting baton.
Yeah. Excellent.
And so one of the first things we are going to learn about what kind of position will make the musician know that we're about to conduct. And I will give you some indication about how we can give a preparation beat and conduct in the 2-beat pattern. So at first, Daniel, you see this all the time. Yeah. So as soon as a conductor would be putting their hands like this.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. This one means, okay, get ready. We're about to start the music. That's where I have the maximum of attention of all the musicians. Obviously, I wouldn't be staying like this for minutes before starting because then I'm going to lack this special moment of concentration. So we're going to provide them a preparation beat in tempo, meaning that the musician will like breathe in if they have an instrument or trumpet. And then we're going to conduct into. So let's take the preparation beat. We're going to go up, up. And then when we're going to fall back, it's going to be beat 1 going down on our invisible table. 1. And then going, and also tiny bit going outside. And then we're going to go back in our position going up. And beat 2. 2. So it's kind of doing a reverse J like this. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. And one important thing, again, for my friends, cello and violins who are on the side, it's important that you maintain that this won't be as high, like 1, 2, like that high, because otherwise for them, beat 1 and 2 would be the same, and it would be complicated from the sides like this. So it's important to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And let's say, for example, when we'll be stopping the music, we could provide a gesture like this, you know, and finito. You know, you cut with doing a circle with both of your hands, and you're cutting the sound. Okay, so let's take, for example, since I've been doing a lot of marching bands, those were my first experiences as a conductor. So as an example, let's conduct in 2 preparations. So pum pa da dum pum pum pa dee da da dum pum pa da dee da dum pum pa da dum pum pa da dee da 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 dee da da. Cut. Okay, this would be an example of 2-beat patterns and then cutting the music. So did you get it, Daniel? Is this fine?
I did, yes, and I hope everyone at home did. I think now that we're running through this, I realize that I hope people at home are not mirroring what Dina's doing. So again, the baton should be in your right hand. So you should be opposite.
Right hand, you're right. Yes.
Realize one challenge of this kind of format.
Yeah, totally, totally. And regarding like the basic guidelines for a gesture to be super clear, and as you know, musicians like yourself, Daniel, you're always with new conductors in front of the orchestra. But what is the most important thing is that like conductors will be taking the advantage of the law of the gravitation, meaning that going into the beat, we're falling into the beat with an acceleration. And this means it's going to be clearer for the musician to understand where the beat will be. As opposed, if I be just, you know, beating like this, doing a breath like this, and then just going down without acceleration, you'll never know where to put that note, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if I be doing circles, but with some acceleration inside of it, musician would still have a better understanding of where the beat is. So we need gravity. We need to find a gesture that will be coherent with the way the musicians will be playing their notes, the length they be using on their bow and such. And of course, the expressivity you're going to bring to the music will make it relevant. And as spontaneous it will be for them to answer, that will mean that your gesture was clear.
Excellent. Before we move on to the next step, I think we do have a question here, and this came up earlier in our conversations too, but are there repetitive strain injuries? Or are they an issue for conductors or any kind of injury?
Actually, it could happen, but just by a really quick move as anybody else in any kind of profession, I would say. But if you use your body the right way and not without tension, because that's the most challenging thing. At first, as an instrument or as a conductor, we hold in a wrong way our body. We are making it work too much in the wrong way. So then we can hurt ourselves. But I would say right now it's more about if I'm taking too much time in the plane that like I will help than conducting. Because when I'm conducting the ballet in Montreal, as an example, sometimes we have 2 shows in the same day. So this means 4 hours of really like performance conducting, and actually don't really get hurt or injured. And this is like for 18 shows in a row. Though I have to say that the musicians, they are like athletes and they don't have the same privilege as I do, meaning that I'm standing up in my profession. I can adapt different gesture. I can find my own vocabulary to mean the musical text. Though as a trumpet player, you're stuck in pretty much one position.
Yeah.
As a violinist, same thing. And therefore, repetitive movements where you are, where you don't choose how you're going to play it, how long you're going to rehearse the thing, and such things makes it really challenging for musicians. And that's why I really comparing totally the job of a musician to an athlete. So we need to be really careful to preserve our health, to make sure that we can sustain this profession.
Excellent. So we've learned how to conduct in 2 now. What's the next thing you have for us today?
After 2, it's going to be conducting in 3. Again, same basics. We need a preparation beat. And again, I'm always assuming that the music would be starting on beat 1. So we're going to do the preparation beat going up. First beat, again, is always down in front of us. First beat. Second beat, this time would be towards your wall, so outside. 2. And then third beat would be going to the ceiling, up. So 1, 2, 3. So it looks like a triangle. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we could have, for example, bolero, let's say. Or let's say something like this. So this is pretty much how we conduct in 3. And again, it's the job of the conductor to choose if we're gonna go with a fast tempo. So a smaller gesture would mean faster tempo. Or then maybe a bigger gesture. So I'm taking all the space needed to show and illustrate a slower tempo. After conducting in 3, then of course conducting in 4. Again, let's get back to attention position, everyone. So again, we're going to go up for the preparation beat. So going up, then first beat, again down. This time, the second beat will be towards the inside. So like this, 2, inside. Third beat towards the wall, 3. Fourth beat towards the ceiling, 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So down, anterior, outside, up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And for example, since we are in charge of the tempo, we could, for example, do an accelerando, meaning that we're going to go from a slower tempo to a faster pace or faster tempo. And therefore, I could do, for example, a gesture that will be poco a poco, smaller and smaller. And then the music will get faster. So bum 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 bum. Then I be just using the wrist as an example, getting even faster as an example. So these are the ways we can conduct a 4-beat pattern and such.
So that's great. Thanks. So that's 2, 3, and 4. Now, music, of course, comes in multiple different time signatures, and we did have a question submitted to us. Are there more complex time signatures, and how would you handle that as a conductor?
Of course, always. So it's not just like, okay, 2, 4, 3, 4, 4, 4. Okay, you're good to go. There's more complex works, such as an example here. We see an excerpt from The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky. And in this part, you're going to have really complex matrix where you need to do sometimes combination of different bars to make it like more, I would say, coherent in the phrasing for the musicians. And you will need to have really, again, the size of your gesture depending of how much notes are in how much beat are in that bar would be super important for the musician to understand where we are at in this. So this is just one example, but there any kind of beat pattern is exists or almost, and sometimes really crazy one when we get to contemporary work. So it's always interesting for us, but it always gets back to the roots of basic two beats, 3 beats, 4 beats, and 1 beat. And again, with following the general guidelines of first beat of a bar is always down, and last beat of a bar is always up, and the before last beat would be outside. And with this kind of knowledge, then we can better make our choice regarding what would be clear for the musicians.
Very, very interesting. And all right, before we move to the next topic, we do have a question from one of our viewers en français. So I'll say in French and then I'll translate it for those. So, je crois qu'un chef de chœur a une autre manière de conduire qu'un chef d'orchestre. So, does a choir director have a different way of conducting than an orchestra conductor?
Bonjour Patrick. Patrick est en Europe en plus. Wow. Okay. Hi Patrick. So, yeah, I mean, there are some kind of tendency, I would say, characteristic about how we're going to conduct different group of instruments. I've been starting with, marching bands, and therefore no strings, and everybody like playing and breathing through an instrument. So I would say that generally we're going to go more towards a kind of vertical kind of gesture. So then as yourself, for example, Danielle, you be clearly being able to breathe and like put your beat there. But this kind of gesture is not necessarily the most coherent for the strings, because they are doing like this in their case. So I would say singers and also marching bands, with the choir directors and marching band teacher will have more tendency of conducting with really straight vertical line, and that's super. And when we get to the orchestra, it's a combination of this, but also combination of going more towards horizontal line that will illustrate a better way the length that we would like to have on a bow stroke and such.
Very cool. Excellent. Another question from our audience here from Nayuri. What are the most common errors done by conductors, such as using larger movements to try and get the orchestra going faster? What mistakes do you see most often?
I mean, we do a lot of mistakes. That's like I said, at first, we are actually practicing our instrument, and again, not instrument because this is humans in front of us and they are really experienced, but we need to learn each time we are on the podium. So therefore, this is one of the way. So we need to be really critical about what didn't work, and is there something I could actually just change in my gesture that would make it more understanding, more easy for my musicians to follow. So like Nairi is saying, when I'm, for example, jury for a high school whatever competition and seeing some teachers, that it happens that exactly like the size of one of the beat will be larger suddenly and having a strong impulse, and therefore all musicians will each time will have a big impact on this beat, such as, for example, let's say conducting in 4, but I'm always taking a really wide bigger 4 beat and a really big 1. It could be like this, or and then small. But then they're going to try, to do an accelerando, and it doesn't work because each time they are making too much space in that 4 beat, and therefore we should actually even like narrow narrow down this beat to make a better accelerando. So this is one of the example, but there could be many different ones. Maybe trying harder in a way because we want to be understood, and harder means necessarily bigger, but bigger is not necessarily better for the musicians to understand.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks for that. So now again, we've learned how to conduct in 2, 3, and 4. What is the next thing that you usually teach?
Yeah, but again, we could briefly try to some exercise, but again, it's just like exercise to make our hand move and get used to doing different things. As an example, and Daniel, I want you to try. So everyone home as well, let's have your left hand and your palm facing down, okay? And we're gonna do this as if we be thinking in a 4-beat pattern. And we're just gonna try an exercise just to express that I would like, for example, to show to the musician, hey, wait, quite soon I'm gonna introduce you to a new information in the score that is not related to tempo and such. And again, this could be done with the right hand as well. This is just out of context, kind of rehearsing things, just so we get better in action and are used to these components and tools to use. So it's gonna be part of 4 beats with different bars. So the first bar, let's say that we're gonna turn our hand in 4 beats, okay? So let's do that. And at first, we're just gonna also kind of give a first cue, initiate the first cue as musician will be playing the first note. So like this, cue, 2, 3, and 4, okay? So we're holding. Now I would like you to feel that you're holding, really feeling that you have something in your hand, and this is the sound, okay? And I need to believe it, right? And then in the next 4 beats, I would like you to push the sound forward and also up, as if you'd be like holding the volume of the orchestra in your hand to guide them to increase in volume, okay? So we're gonna do this in the next 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, and push the volume, 2, 3, 4. And then we're gonna do a diminuendo in 2 bars of 4, going towards us, so back, and also moving our hand down like this in 2 bars, okay? And let's do this in 1, 2, 3, 4. Diminuendo, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So we're just gonna do the complete exercise. I'm gonna show it to you once, okay? So it's turn, 2, 3, 4, up, 2, 3, 4, down, 2, 3, 4, down, 2, 3, 4. I mean, also we want to really, like, your full body should express that you want, hey, wait a second, I'm gonna show you something. Crescendo, and then diminuendo, diminuendo. Okay, let's try this in 1, 2, 3, and start. And turn, 2, 3, 4. Crescendo, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Diminuendo, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Daniel, are you still there?
I am.
Yeah?
It reminds me of Tai Chi a little bit.
Yeah, kind of thing, because you don't want 2, 3, 4, that kind of thing. And one of the most important thing, again, you could do this with your hands and have no reaction from the orchestra, because the most important thing is to be super convincing and believable that, like, you are holding and touching at first the sound, and then therefore you can show different dynamics. And again, I would not necessarily do a straight kind of thing like this in front of an orchestra, never. It's just, again, just a kind of tool that I'm making my students to practice dynamics. But then here's the trick. How about we conduct with the right hand, 4-beat pattern? Yes. And then we do that with our left hand. Let's get ready in 1, 2, 3, and 4. So turn, 2, 3, 4, crescendo, 2, 3, 4, diminuendo, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So this is one of the way. But obviously, we could also show different dynamics using from bigger gesture as an example. But bigger doesn't necessarily mean stronger. So this is going back to the question about what is bad for a conductor. Is actually, if you have a really fast tempo and it's really strong, it's not by doing big gesture that it's going to help out. It's more about the intensity of exactly that gesture. So this means you can be having a really strong impulse and had all the weight there and all the sound there, as opposed to getting as much in the air for the same impact and a really fast tempo. That wouldn't work. So you need to find something that will be possible for this. And obviously, in outside of the dynamics that are kind of the link between the notes, there's many things to think about, because we haven't even mentioned articulations and such. But if you're having your conducting baton, you could think, for example, as you're painting a wall or painting a wall, what kind of density you would see on your canvas using, some kind, okay? And going, for example, if I'd be doing something really airy, French music, really calm, then maybe I'm gonna have still kind of wide gesture, but like without pressure and really gentle. And this, for example, would show the kind of color and texture I would have in the sound, as opposed to if I have more dance music where, for example, I don't Wagner or Mahler, and then maybe I'm feeling more in my mind that I'm conducting underwater and having some resistance to go in between the beats, or some melasses or something that makes it. So it's all these kind of images that we can have in our mind to create the sound and the texture between the notes. So the musician can understand what is the meaning there.
So I think on that note, it makes sense. And the formal learning part of today's session, I know that's just an intro into the various things that can be taught as a conducting student, but hopefully it gives our audience a bit of a taste. And to go into some question and answer times. I know I'm sure lots of people have lots of questions, and we have two already, so I'll start with those. And if other people want to write out their questions in our question and on a comment on the Facebook live feed, we'll hopefully get to them as we can. So I have one here from Pierre-Luc, again, a bilingual question, but I'll say both. So, quel est le meilleur livre sur le sujet ou le meilleur spécialiste? What's the best for the subject or the best specialist, or in your opinion, your conducting idol, I guess.
Wow. Okay. I remember Pierre-Luc. It's been a while now. I'm thinking we were probably in the cadets together. He was playing percussion, if I remember well. So, hi, Pierre-Luc. I mean, the best book, you know what? Actually, it's the score itself. You can, yes, of course, take any kind of reference here and there for orchestration and structure and learning things. But most of the time, at the end, I'm just like, this is there. This is where it should be starting. And this is where it should be ending as well. So I would say, feed yourself with any kind of content. Also, go to different exhibitions, go outside, travel around the world. Actually, ask questions to really talented musicians as well, because they have so much experience. I remember that, like, as an assistant at Montreal Symphony Orchestra, Orchestre Symphonique de Montréal, to me, each week was like a gift, seeing in action the reaction of different conductors, like guest conductors with the same orchestra, achieving different kinds of results, really good results, but again, with different characteristic because of one component that was changed, being the conductor on the podium. So I would say it's never ends. So there's no one simple book that to make life easier, unfortunately.
Excellent. Our next question here is from Bruno Pierre. So, do you absolutely need the partition when conducting, or could you rely solely on your memory through the whole piece? So, the partition being the score. Do you need the score?
Okay, I would say most of the time I like to have the score there, even if it be a reference, because anything could happen. We never know. Even more if we have a soloist, because, for example, if a soloist is jumping a beat or such things, you want to be really accurate and being able to guide the orchestra really quickly if need be. But again, these would be like really catastrophic kind of issue. But there's two ways of thinking about this. It's most important for the conductor. There was one of my master class teacher who used to say, and this is like really general quotes about, you should have the score in your head and not your head in the score. So of course you learn as much as possible the music, but I also had some people who made me think about, for example, if you're doing it by memory, are you really able to write every single note and every single dynamics from the beginning to the end of the piece? If not, you should have your score. So I would say that, like, I've been doing a few performances. I recall my final exam of my doctorate program. I was doing Brahms Fort, and I did it by memory, and I felt it was really a great experience. But I would say it depends of the piece. If it's a piece I've been growing with for a long time, let's say that. Also, if there's a soloist component, I would avoid it. And it's all about the amount of different works we are actually performing. Since it's so exciting, we have new program to perform. And actually, each time I'm looking at a score, there's always new information there, but like always. So I would say that I have so much affection for those scores that I have them there, but it's more about the many hours I've been spending with this score, and it has like for me a kind of special touch about what we're gonna do. But I'm trying to have it just as a guide and not, being stuck in it.
Excellent, thank you. On one question we had that was submitted before for today's session, and this is more about your role as a music director, but how do you choose the music for the orchestra and the music we play?
Yeah, that's a really great privilege because as a conductor, you conduct or you're invited to conduct a specific program, but as a music director, you can actually provide the artistic vision for an organization. You're also in charge of being there, attending the auditions when we have new musicians and opening in the orchestra and such. And this is one of the best things I like to do in the summer, for example, for the next season, 1 year later. I kind of like get inspired by the dates in which we have, for example, a venue available for us, because I feel I want to have in my mind what would I like to actually hear at this specific moment of the year. As, for example, for food, sometimes we prefer eating some kind of food in the summer versus in the winter. So to me, it's a little bit different. And I'm trying also to find pieces that will have a special angle to if they are linked together as a package. So again, a continuity for a master chef that would have a appetizer, then the full meal, and then the dessert. Still having, some kind of link in between why actually I've been putting this together. So there might be something. So this is how we can also, I feel, have a fresh eye on the same piece. So if I'm doing Beethoven 7 linked to a young Canadian piece, I think there would be some component that would be really exciting to hear if we have both of them together, as opposed if I have a whole Beethoven's concerts or any kind of thing. So I feel it's a way for us to have fresh eyes and fresh perspective by choosing different works and putting them together for our audience.
Excellent, thank you. And one last question here. So from Matcha, but how many hours do you spend preparing in general?
Hi, Matcha. Actually, I need to say that Matcha have been with us on our trip to 100 miles and 108 miles when we've been driving with tasteful excursions. So she was providing our shuttle there, the transportation, so we could get in these places. And she's been with us. And actually, I recall that I made her conduct at the end of one of the workshops. So I hope I'm rehearsing even more now. So to answer your questions, actually, I've never calculated the amount of work, the amount of hours either. So I have no clue. It's just a lot of time. But since I have pleasure with this profession, I don't feel I'm working as much. Therefore, I'm not punching in and out about the numbers of hours I would be spending on a piece.
And another question just came in here. So from Brian, so without a click track, how do you manage to keep the right tempos?
Without click track. So a click tracks are for people who wouldn't know what is a click track. I'm using this, for example, in some specific concerts and or when we are in studio recording music. So then, we want to, as like a pop ensemble who are on the TV show, they have all the in-ear kind of click to make sure everything will be super accurate. So the right tempo, what actually is the right tempo? This would be my philosophical answer. So
I assume they mean not speeding up or slowing down. But
yeah, so it will depend because, for example, if I'm working with dancers, I need, since I'm working with different groups of soloists, let's say like this, and also speaking with them just before performance, sometimes I will get an info about, they want a tiny bit faster at this place. So I will try to adjust as much as possible with what I'm seeing on stage. But actually, I have to say that I don't have like absolute tempo, and I wish. But so I wouldn't say, okay, I'm exactly to 72 or 71. But what is useful for a conductor is to have some excerpts of the piece and not necessarily the opening that make it, kind of relevant of, oh, yes, this is my reference of like, this would be actually the tempo I should reach. Because if I'm doing faster at this place, I will have a problem, as an example. So I'm kind of looking at different spots in the piece where, and then going backwards about, okay, this is my general tempo. But again, classical music is really flexible. And just to give you an example, if you be asking a symphony orchestra to play with a live band that has a click and that the orchestra doesn't have the click, they will feel weird and like, come on, no, the beat is there. How come we don't feel it the same way? And also because we, like I explained before, depending of where you are on the stage, your understanding of where to play your notes regarding the click might also be different. So when I'm doing something that needs to be really in sync with the full orchestra and let's say the movie, such as I've been doing The Artist or E.T. With Montreal Orchestre Symphonique de Montréal. In this case, I had the click track or I had some kind of click and punch on the screen with the film. And actually, I had this responsibility of making sure the orchestra was to be together. But most of the time, I rather have no clicks for the orchestra, so they are just in their natural kind of way of playing. So they have their own signature, and I'm the one who will be managing that kind of delay depending of the excerpts. So it depends. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. With that, I think we should probably wrap this up. I know it's getting late in Montreal, and those of us in Pacific time are probably getting ready for dinner now. But with that being said, I want to thank you again for participating in today's workshop, and thank all our audience members for tuning in tonight. Again, thank you to all our sponsors and patrons and donors who have been so supportive during this time, and we're very much looking forward to joining you again in some capacity soon. And if for some reason you have further questions that weren't answered that we didn't get to, feel free to submit them to us via email at info@kamloopsymphony.com, or if you're already on Facebook, you can send us the Kamloops Symphony a Facebook message, and we'll get back to you or pass them on to Dina to get back to you as soon as possible. Dina, do you have any final words or?
Just final words again, like I said, now you have the basic knowledge about what is a conductor. And I hope that this understanding will make you think in another way when you're attending a concert, knowing that these kind of codes are just the basics towards actually illustrating the music, and that every conductor will find their own way through these gestures to be understood by the musician. So yeah, I just hope, like everyone else, we just hope to be back really soon with the musicians, of course, and with you. So I'm really looking forward to it. And thank you very much, Daniel and Ryan, for making this happen.
Thank you again. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye.